Hello, so I know it's been a while since I posted my last video. About 2 months ago, right? I posted that I was going to go in for an adult autism assessment, that I did my initial part of the assessment via Zoom, so it was just like a patient interview intake type of thing. And then the second part, which is the actual full-blown assessment, was scheduled for like 2 months later. So I just had the full-blown assessment last Friday, so I wanted to come in here and just kind of update. It was a like 3.5 hour long test. The psychologist did tell me when we met via Zoom initially that it was going to be like a 3 to 4 hour long test, so that I should expect to be there for a while. It was a lot of cognitive tests, a lot of like things on the computer. Like, for example, I remember one of the tests was like it was flashing black letters on the screen one by one, and it was like the instructions were something like press the space bar for every letter except X or something like that, right? So it was like for every letter that popped up that wasn't X, I was supposed to press the spacebar, and the speed at which the letters were coming at me varied. So at first they would pop up one by one, very slowly, and then they started going faster and faster, and then they would slow down, and it did that for a while, and then I did other cognitive tests like mazes, like there was one that was like had letters and numbers on the page, and I had to connect each letter to each number and alternate. So like one connected to A, two connected to B, three C, etc., etc. A bunch of self-rating scales. Two of them, two of the surveys I did recognize. They were the depression survey and the anxiety survey, because I've taken this before, right? And so it'll ask you, like, in the past month, how often have you felt, depressed? How often have you felt like you've lost interest in doing like your usual hobbies, all of that. So rate it from like 1 to 4. So it was a lot of like different surveys like that. One of them looked at depression, the other one looked at anxiety. One of them I'm pretty sure looked at like ADHD. Um, there was a survey on masking, like how often did I feel like I needed to mask, and how often do I feel like I'm imitating the way that other people act, which is quite a bit. And I've mentioned that before on this channel, that a lot of the times I felt like in order to learn how to socialize and act proper, a lot of that came from just like copying and imitating what other people did. Um, so a bunch of questionnaires, and then they did. He also did the wordless picture book. Like, it's a wordless picture book that's literally with has a bunch of frogs on it, and the frogs are floating around on lily pads, and they come up and to a house, and they go in through the window. And anyway, the point is for me to tell a story with these pictures. And that I do remember doing. I think I told you guys about 3 years ago, I think, when I initially had my adult autism assessment, but it was a lot less comprehensive than this one. The first one was like that wordless picture book, and maybe like 2 surveys and a quick interview, and I think we were in and out of there within the hour. And it was a different psychologist that I worked with 3 years ago. So, everyone does things different. This particular psychologist that I worked with, I felt like he was very thorough, and like all the assessments and all of the like the questionnaires and the surveys that he had me fill out, and all the cognitive assessments. It was a lot of cognitive assessments. One of them, I remember that I used to have to do that when I was younger, because I grew up, because of my cerebral palsy, I had an IEP, and occasionally every 3 years, I know that the school psychologist would test me, right, to see if I continued to qualify for whatever services. And I remember that she would show me a card with a picture, for example, with a picture with patterns. Actually, let me kind of show you guys. And don't mind my room, it's a huge mess. I have not been able to clean. I've been exhausted, but let me show you guys kind of what I'm. Uh, I really need to work on cleaning my room. Um, so, okay. So it was like kind of like this, like he would show, and I bought this a while ago because I told myself I was going to practice because it was so difficult for me to make these patterns, and I never actually did get around to practicing. But so he would show me like a card with like a pattern and give me physical blocks and black, I mean no, white and red blocks, and I had to recreate the pattern physically using the blocks. And of course the patterns kind of get more and more complex as we go along. So that was another cognitive test that I remember doing. Anyway, all in all, it was very long and very thorough, and he did say that it takes him about 2 weeks to interpret the results and write up the report, and that because it's so many assessments, the report is like ends up being like 50 pages long. Um, but that if I had any questions, that he does kind of summarize it in on page 3, I think, and that if I had any questions, I could email him and ask him, at any time. So at this point, I guess it's just a waiting game. Um, I don't know what I'm expecting from this test. I guess it wouldn't surprise me if he said that I do in fact have ADHD, which would just kind of reconfirm my initial diagnosis of ADHD. But sometimes I think, and I've discussed this in other videos, that I also might have autism. And another thing that I'm trying to figure out is why I can't drive, why I get lost literally everywhere I go. I have no sense of direction, and it doesn't matter how many times I've been somewhere, I will get lost. Navigating unfamiliar, in some cases familiar places on my own is kind of terrifying. I get lost so easily. I can sometimes get around by landmarks, and I've said this before. Um, like I remember that my middle school used to be right across the street from a McDonald's. So when I would turn the corner and my parents would drop me off, I'd see the McDonald's, so that's how I knew, oh, the middle school's right there. It's right across the street. But if at any point the McDonald's was torn down and replaced with something else, I promise you, I would get lost. That's how bad it is. And I saw a comment a couple days ago that someone left on one of my videos, I think the previous video, asking me if I had ever heard about nonverbal learning disability. I haven't, but I did look into it and it sounds really interesting, and a lot of it does sound like me. And I wonder if it's something like that. Or there's also something called topographical disorientation disorder, which is exactly like just not being able to memorize directions and just getting lost everywhere you go. And I wonder if there's a connection between all of these different things that I struggle with and my cerebral palsy. And I think that's the deeper issue that I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to see if all of these things are intertwined and how much of it is my CP. Because CP in itself, cerebral palsy, is already a neurodivergence, right? It's a difference in the brain and in how it functions. And I wonder how much of all of my issues stem from that. But I guess, I don't know, maybe there really isn't just that one professional that can tell me, yes, maybe this side of your brain is affected, and that affects these parts of the brain which are responsible for like visual processing, or yes, you're right, you haven't been able to drive, you can't keep the wheel straight because it's got something to do with, I don't know, your depth perception or something. I guess in the end, I'm looking for something like that, and I don't know if I will get it. Um, and I don't know what good it would do. I guess it would just help me understand myself better and to see if there's anything that I can do um, to kind of accommodate my own difficulties. I apologize. I haven't been here in a while. I am in my very last year of graduate school to become a speech and language pathologist. I've literally have been working for free in a new placement because they put me at a new school. And then I do that all day from like 8:45 to 3, and then I come home and I have class at 6. Except for today, there is no class, but most days I do have class. And then in between, I'm just trying to keep up with mom duties and homework and projects and essays and things that I have to turn in. And I don't have the time or the energy to even clean my room, as you can clearly see if you look behind me. Um, and so I haven't really had a chance to come on here, but I just wanted to kind of update you guys on that. And I wanted to mention, have I ever mentioned that I sometimes feel like a helpless child? It's so weird because I'm doing my clinical placement where I have to go to, right now I'm working at a high school and I'm doing speech therapist things. I'm giving the kids speech therapy, and my supervisor is there most of the time, like 90% of the time, watching us and giving us feedback. And it's me and another student clinician who is actually from an entirely different university who just happened to land at the same clinical placement that I'm at. So she's supervising, my supervisor is supervising the both of us. And we're both working to become speech therapists, but we're going to different universities. And it's almost like I've become dependent on this other student clinician to help me navigate the school, to help me. Like, having her there reduces the anxiety of, like, I know that all eyes are not on me and all expectations are not on me because she's here too. So it's like, it just feels more comfortable. Um, and my supervisor does this thing where the way that she keeps track of um, sessions and whether or not students attended is on this attendance sheet grid with tiny little squares that I struggle to write on because partly I think it's because of my spasticity with cerebral palsy. I grip my pen or my pencil too tight, and also my handwriting is terrible. So the other girl, the other student clinician, has actually been doing most of the that part where she writes in the what students attended on which days, like the attendance sheet part of it. Um, and today she didn't come to work because she wasn't feeling well. And I swear, like, I was low key freaking out. I felt like so alone, and I felt abandoned. I felt like I was going to bomb the entire day, and like I wasn't going to be able to manage on my own without her, even though we've been collaborating. And sometimes I do sessions and sometimes my supervisor has her do sessions, but we've done sessions separately and we've done testing separately. But I don't know, I felt like something was missing, and I felt like a scared little girl that I was going to go into work by myself and that the other student clinician, wasn't going to be there to help me out when I needed it. And like, I've noticed that I do this thing with people where it's almost like I become dependent on them. I think in the end I did fine. I mean, I didn't like majorly mess anything up. I had my sessions, I assessed my students. I don't know if my insecurities were showing. I think for the most part I do a pretty good job at like masking my insecurities. But I was terrified the entire time, and I don't know where that fear of like abandonment and I can't do things on my own comes from. And I've just kind of noticed that pattern. It's that I feel that I can't be my own person and that I need someone else to help me navigate through life and help me be an adult. Does that make sense? I don't know. But yeah, I guess that's it for now.